How much are limiting beliefs operating our in our psyche? How much are the limiting beliefs the things that are guiding us down the path of I can't do it, I don't have enough, I'm not small enough, I'm or big enough, I'm too old, I'm not smart, whatever the things are, how much of those are really running our mind? How much have has our mind been programmed with some of these limiting beliefs of what is possible and what's not possible? If you can see it in your eyes, you can hold it with your hands, right? If you can see it in your imagination, you can hold it with your hands. So how much are your limiting beliefs controlling you? And we got to break out of those things. Changing the story. Life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you. Life does not happen to you, it happens for you. Everything that's happening is for you to become the person that God needs you to be. It's for you to experience the things you need to have the capacity to handle the life that's up ahead. Everything that's happening is for you. So we got to change the story, right? He said suffering comes from the perception of the story, not the facts. Suffering comes from the perception. Gave a great example, right? If you're all broken up by somebody, by a loved one that died, that passed away, 6 months later, it's not because of that thing. It's because of what story you're telling yourself about that thing. That you don't believe this should happen. That how could this have been, right? Like that's the story, but it's not the fact of what actually happened. And we have to learn how to separate those things. Change the conditioning. I wrote down, change the conditioning. It's hard to change the strategy, change the thinking. You got to change the conditioning, the wiring. How it got fired up in you is how it got wired up in you. So now you got to undo that wiring. You got to figure out exactly, hey, how this get implanted. And now that's why Tony Robbins uses very strong language around changing it. He says you got to blow it up, you got to annihilate it, you got to crush it, right? There's a heavier language because the conditioning is probably well wired by this point. And so you have to do extreme things in order to get rid of it. You got to annihilate it, you got to crush it, you got to blow it up, you got to get rid of that thinking, that conditioning. And he said changing your philosophy is what Jim Rohn taught us, the philosophy of stretching. Anytime you have a limiting belief that says I can't, you have to turn that into why you must do that. Tony Robbins is famous for saying we don't get our shoulds, we get our musts. We don't get what we should have. We don't get what we should deserve. We don't get what we should, right? Feel like we need. We get what we must. What we must have. I must have this feeling. I must have these things, right? And so if you start to have, and this is what Jim Rohn said, the philosophy of stretching, if you have these thoughts of things you can't do, as soon as that happens, I don't have the money. I can't do this. Change that to why you must do it. Take massive action around it. Again, just the quick switches in how we think, the quick changes in our brain, the quick changes in the operating system that creates the environment, creates the outcomes that we have in life. If we want to change these things, we have to change how we think about them. So I know it sounds a little out of the norm or it seems a little weird to do those things, but it's because we're trying to unwire programming that no longer serves us. It's no longer going to get you to the promised land. It's no longer going to get you to the place where you can design the life you don't need a break from. The programming, the wiring you have is not helping you get there. So we have to change the philosophy. By changing the philosophy, we change our habits. We take different actions. We do things completely differently. And that's what we got to do. We got to start changing some things into musts. Stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. Might be some tough preaching for a Monday morning, but you need to stop making excuses. I need to stop making excuses, right? I'm in an accountability group in my in my health life, right? In my health life, I'm with some guys that are crushing it, doing some challenges and things. And yesterday we had a meeting. I found myself making an excuse. Yeah, me. Yeah, the guy that always comes and tells you not to make excuses and all this stuff. I found myself making an excuse as to why I was not doing as well as the other guys. I heard it in my head. I heard it in my head. It's like, oh man, like Some of them have jobs. Man, not all of them have families. Ah, man, not all of them have the living situation that I have. They don't understand what's happening. I felt myself making the excuse as to why they're getting 90s and 100 on their scorecard and I'm getting a 75, right? I felt the excuses and I snapped myself out of it real quick to be like, man, you better stop making these excuses, right? You're not doing it because you haven't prioritized waking up earlier. You haven't prioritized putting this into your schedule. That's why it's a priorities thing. It's not an excuse. I've had to train my brain how to do that because 7 years ago, I would have listened to myself and justified what I was thinking as to the reason why I wasn't getting the results I wanted. We all have that little excuse button in our mind. We all have that little reason to justify why we're not getting the things we want or why we don't have the life that we want. You got to eliminate those excuses. You got to stop making excuses. The reason you don't have what you want is because it's not a priority to you. You haven't had the pain of staying the same, become too great. So you're still unwilling to change. We got to stop making excuses. Then he talked about those three things, those three P's that create learned helplessness. He says if you believe things are permanent, if you believe things are pervasive, and you believe things are personal, if you believe things are permanent, that the problems you face, the challenge you're having, the season you're in, your financial life, whatever it is, you think that's permanent. You think it's not going to change. That's how we create this learned helplessness. Every problem goes away. There's no problems that are permanent. This too shall pass. So, whatever the major issue is, guess what? It's going to pass. But how are you thinking about it through this process? Have you changed your thoughts around it so that you can move through it faster? Is it pervasive, right? Is this the end all be all? When I sit down and coach people and people are in a really tough place, they take all of the problems and say, right, because I have these one or two, my whole life is bad. My whole life, I can't figure this out. Because I got this financial thing and this health thing, man, my life is just going down the tubes. God, why me? I can't. They just, it's too pervasive. It's too much all on one thing. You got to isolate and be like, hey, if I just fix this one thing, all the rest of these things will change. And that's huge. And then don't take it personally. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. Always remember that it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And so you got to believe that things are happening for your good. And sometimes we need to kind of reframe the stuff that has happened in the past and tell ourselves a completely different story. Tell ourselves something completely different about it. If you're holding on to a story of a past painful experience, it's going to show up more in your current, show up more in your future. So this is the lesson from today in our text, 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class. It says the world class reframes painful past experiences. This is part of the conditioning, y'all. This is part of the programming. This is part of the story. This is how we get to the limiting beliefs. Like this is where it all comes from. It's because, the reason why a child can be right very, very happy throughout the day and joyful and all this is because they're not living off of past memories. They're not living off of past painful experiences. They can still have hope and joy and all the things for the future. As we get older, we remember these past things. The job, if you want to be a champion, you want to design a life you don't need to break from, you got to learn how to reframe this stuff. It says here, champions believe the only thing relevant about their past is how it affects their present and future. The middle class consciousness bases many beliefs on the events of the past. Yet the world class knows the past does not equal the future. Champions are masters at placing new, empowering meanings on the struggles of the past. Average people invest a lot of time living in the past and wishing things were different. The great ones know that without the trouble and turbulence that they experienced in the past, they would not be where they are today. This attitude creates a mental harmony and fosters good feelings about an otherwise troublesome set of memories. Good memories of the past are not an issue for anyone. It's the tough times that reveal the level of the performer. The great ones share the philosophy that everything happens for a reason. This allows them to reframe events they originally perceived as negative. This is another example of how champions use the concept of truth versus fact. The past event is fact. How they interpret the past event is truth. Say that again. The past is the fact that did happen to you. That did happen in your life. You did experience that. That is a fact. How you interpret the past is the truth. It's what you choose. That's why the truth is subjective. It's because it's how you thought you might have felt that thing or went through that thing, but it's how you interpreted it. Someone else could have a different truth. You've been hearing that a bunch in our society. So you got to understand that's how you interpret it. It says, knowing they cannot change the facts of the past, champions instead alter their interpretation of the facts. This mental tool enables them to transform the pain of the past into a positive catalyst for growth in the future. So you have to learn, ladies and gentlemen, these limiting beliefs, these experiences that you had in the past, we have to reframe them to know it's not that it didn't happen, but the meaning that you put behind it is what matters. The story that you tell yourself about that event is what matters. The intent that you think, or the assumption of the intent is what is causing you to feel a certain way about that situation. So we got to push past this stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We got to push past these things. We got to learn how to take whatever happened in the past, figure out how it's affecting us, and reframe it. Reframe it. Look at it differently. How could this have been a good thing for you? How could this have been something that you actually needed to go through in order to achieve what you have achieved today? How can you look back and say, right, what did that teach you? What lesson did that give you that now you can apply in your life now? What lesson did that teach you that now you can give to your children or to your grandchildren, right? The painful past experiences don't have to stay painful if you learn how to reframe it, if you learn how to think about it a little bit differently. Remember, Tony Robbins just said that in our video. Suffering comes from the perception of the event, not the fact of it. The suffering part, the painful part, the part that it's hard to get over, the part that you struggled with for a long time, and it caused you to create more limiting beliefs. It caused you to question and doubt and worry and all those things. Like the event that did that, it wasn't the event, it was the meaning you placed on that event, the story you tell yourself about that event. That is the reason why it's tough to get through. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to challenge you, like I always do. I'm going to challenge you to reframe some of those things so we can get to a brighter future. Reframe some of the things that just happened to you in January. It doesn't have to be all the way back in, when you were 7, even though for some of you it might be that too, right? You might still be operating because, right, little Timmy in the classroom got made you feel embarrassed because you asked the stupid question. And so at 7 years old, you said, I'm never gonna feel that way again. And then you stopped asking questions. And then you started figuring out this life by yourself. Maybe that did happen when you're 7, but maybe something just happened again last year and somebody said something to you that said, oh, you're too old or you're too young or this isn't for you or I don't know how you're going to make this happen. And you've allowed that past painful experience to now determine what your future is going to look like. That, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do. We're the people that, again, continue to want to design our ideal life to grow into the people that we have the capacity to handle that life that we don't need a break from. Well, we got to do things like this. We got to make these little shifts in our mindset where we say, you know what, that past painful thing, that thing that I'm thinking about, it actually has no relation to the future. Matter of fact, I learned some good things for it that equipped me for what I need up ahead. The fact that I went through that trial, the fact that I went through those turbulences allowed me to equip myself to know what to look out for up ahead because we're climbing more of this mountain. That's how you got to look at things, ladies and gentlemen. This quote here says, it's never too late to have a wonderful childhood. Think about that. It's never too late to have a wonderful childhood. Why? Because it's just about the stories, just about the meanings. You're not going to take away the facts. Sure, some things happened as a child. However, the meaning that you create, right? The way you interpret that truth will allow you to again go back and have a wonderful childhood. This action step for today says review the 3 most difficult adversities you've listed before and ask yourself how these events contributed to your future success and fulfillment. Reframe each event into a memory with the potential to serve you in the future. That's the way to do it. Review the 3 most difficult adversities you had in the past. Ask yourself, how these events contributed to your future success or fulfillment, and reframe each event into a memory with the potential to serve you in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll submit to you that you are where you are right now in life currently because of the thoughts, the stories that you have, the beliefs that you hold have gotten you right to this place. If you would like to get to a different place, we have to unlearn and unwire and uncondition, right, those thoughts so that we can place new thoughts. We can reframe new beliefs so that we can get new outcomes. But if you hold on to old stories, right? You get old habits, you do old things. That's what continuously happens. But that's not us, ladies and gentlemen. That's not you. I'm so proud of y'all for continuing to push on your personal development journey. As always, like I tell you guys, people are counting on you. People are counting on you to get this information, apply this information, go out and do something great with your life. I know you have things that you want to get to. I know you have a life up ahead that you see for yourself and for your family. Now is the time to go get it. I love you guys. I want you to win. You deserve it. Let's come back here on Wednesday and keep our personal development journey going. Love you guys. Take care.